Look at this year revenue in 2020. Veritas brought in $22,034,000. I can only imagine with this Pfizer video. Here's what I think. It's the money. And I'll tell you why this. Some people are like, I think Pfizer came in and did something. I'm not so sure about that. That would be bad PR wise. Like, you don't want to pour fuel on a fire of a story by. There's a story of these activists who were protesting outside of a McDonald's, saying McDonald's was bad. McDonald's sued them, won, and then their stock tanked because the news reporting was that massive corporation attacks to private individuals. Pfizer's got to be like, everyone's cheering these guys on. If we go after them, it's going to hurt us. Let's ignore it. Here's what I think. In 2020, take a look at these numbers. In 2019, Project Veritas brings in $12,151,496. 1 year later, they nearly double their revenue to $22 million. How much money do you think is going to come in now that they had the biggest stories, this biggest story ever in the history of Veritas? I can only imagine they're going to hit 40, 50 million. Okay, maybe I'm way off with that.
40 was my first thought.
40, right? Now imagine you're on the board and you're like, guys, look how much money we have. I could never have. And then James says, we are not using the money for what you want. We are going to use the money the way I see it, and we're going to do the mission. And I don't think the board members necessarily are thinking I'm going to stuff my pockets, but they're saying something like, let's use the funds to build a new building and we can start doing this and that and we can put a gym there. And then James is like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to expose this. You got to get rid of. This is what I said when we first got word that he was suspended. If you want access to the cash, you've got to get rid of the ideological founder who's standing in the way of that big pile of money. Now for them to come out with a new excuse that you was misappropriating funds, it's projecting.
Right.
It's what we typically see from these leftists. They accuse others.
Well, they've got board members posting their pronouns in their Twitter bios.
And accusing someone else of malfeasance.
And how do board members get on boards? They donate to the organization,
Typically,
right?
yeah.
So if you had a year like this, and again, like I used to work in fundraising, the top amount of money comes from a very narrow number of donors typically, right? So I think, yes, they have really great grassroots support, but there are probably a couple new donors who saw the work they have done and said, I am willing to really either scale up what I'm giving or I'm willing to give a huge donation for the first time. Now, that's a threat to all the other board members, right? They are potentially going to lose their position if they are now competing with these other high dollar donors. I think that this is a sketchy thing to do, especially when your organization is doing so well, has this big story out, unless you personally feel threatened.
It seems like James is intimating it's Pfizer. He said the only thing that has changed is that we broke the biggest story in our organization's history during the last week of January in 2023 with 50 plus million views. Our video became a global phenomenon. He then goes on to add more context and says that is the only thing that has changed. Then suddenly an unusual emergency happened just a few days after the story, he continued. And then he says, on Thursday, February 2nd, I was informed by an officer of Veritas on the phone while en route to the airport that he would resign unless I stepped down as CEO.